Actually, while this is loading or building, I'm going to throw out a link in Slack just to this Redux DevTool Chrome extension. So I already have this installed, but you'll just want to click the install, and then you'll have, you know, a Redux tool. I think it might not show up if the page you're looking at is not a Redux app or has like Redux in it. So I don't think I can see it right now. But go ahead and install that. Okay. So go ahead and CD into this app. We're going to install 2 libraries for this. We're going to install Redux and React Redux. These are the bare minimum we need to get started with this. So like I said, Redux is not like necessarily built for React. It's its own separate library. So we had the Redux, and then there is a wrapper that helps us connect React and the Redux library. So those are the 2 libraries we're installing. Okay. So what I'm going to do, we're going to like look at this a couple times. So here's kind of the terms that you might want to think about. So we're going to have a store, and you can just think of your store as your global state. That's just going to be where all of your state lives. We're going to have actions. We've already seen actions when we talked about the use reducer hook. And we have a reducer. So let's say we're like on a React component and we press a button or something. Like we want to toggle something to show and not show. So we're going to press a button. That is we can have like an event, dispatch, and action. So we have actions, and actions are dispatched. And those actions are dispatched to our reducers. Remember, our reducers are the things that take our state and return new state. So it's going to get the action, and it might get some like a payload with that. It's going to go to our reducer, and our reducer is going to return a new state, which is going to update our store, which is going to change our UI. So we have some sort of event or some sort of thing in our UI that's going to dispatch an action. Our action is sent to our reducer with maybe some additional payload. Our reducer is going to update our state, give us a brand new state that's going to be changed in our store, and then that updates the component. So it's a relatively straightforward kind of flow. So let's go ahead and open this up into code. And kind of let's do some setup. So in my source, I'm going to create this store that we just talked about. This is going to be I'm just going to, I keep on rename, not finishing this. I'm going to call this store.js. And I'm going to Slack this thing out that we're going to throw in here. We'll kind of look at it. Did I not? Okay. So what I just slacked out is what we're going to throw in our store.js file. So a couple things. Line 3, we're importing a root reducer from .rootReducers index. We haven't created this yet, so this is going to be undefined. We have this line 5 through 9. This is going to set up that, this is going to help set up that Chrome extension that we just installed. So that's set up for the Chrome extension. Here we're actually creating our store. And we're just taking our root reducer. So our root reducer is going to be all of our reducers in our app combined into one reducer. So at the end of the day, we have one reducer, we have one store. We're going to create multiple reducers, but they all get combined into one reducer. And then here we're just setting up that like hot reloading, that when we make a change, it automatically refreshes. So we're just setting that up for Redux. So there's our store. And now we need to make this root reducer component. So we need to make a reducers folder. So I'm going to do a new file, call this reducers. And then inside of here, we're going to do a index.js. Okay. We can just leave that blank for now. All right, let's go to our app, or sorry, our index.js and get that set up to take our store. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to import this provider component from React Redux. Provider. And I'm going to wrap my app in that provider. And then I'm going to pass it the store, which is the thing I just created from my .store file. So this is very similar to when we talked about context, where we wrapped our app in a provider and then we passed it some data. So it's very similar. Here we're just using Redux to do it. So now our app is going to have access to this store, which is going to have all of our global state. Cool. So we're going to do a lovely, lovely to-do list today. So I would say this, doing a to-do list with Redux is overkill. Like, if that's all you're trying to do, you wouldn't want to use Redux because it's like way too much setting up. It's like just use props and state. But we're going to start small and just to help us learn this. Cool. So let's create a couple components in here. So you can do this manually in like right click and create file, or you can do this in your iTerm. But in our source directory, I want to create a source/to-do list.js. Let's create that to-do list.js. I'm going to do a to-do form.js. I'm going to do a footer. Man, it is windy outside. Let's see here. Are we going to do a to-do? Let's also touch a to-do.js. Cool. And I'm just going to slack out one stubbed out component. I just like doing these. So here's a to-do form. So I'm just going to kind of stub all these out. So here's my to-do form. Maybe I should throw in like a header or something. Form. Let's do a to-do list. And our footer. All right. So then in my app.js, I can go ahead and let's get rid of all of this. A fragment. Can do a to-do list. Do our to-do form. Maybe our footer. To-do form at the top. Slack this one out too. Let's see here. I think if I try to run this, I'm probably going to get an error because I don't have anything in my reduce. I have this reducers index.js, which is just blank, but it's kind of written a lot of code. Just want to see if I can, yeah. There we go. I'm getting an error. Expected the reducer to be a function. This is a good error because it's just telling us a reducer is just a function. That's all the reducer is. Export default. Let's see if that fixes the error. So my index in my reducers index.js right now, it's expecting my reducer to be a function. So I just export default a blank function because in my store.js, that's where I'm importing it, import the root reducer. That's where I create my store. I create my store with my root reducer, which is just going to be a function. Let's refresh. There we go. And then, yeah, obviously this is not, we're going to need to change that, but that just gets it up and running. Maybe here, I just want to do a little bit of styling. Just the center stuff. So I'm going to do a max width of 800 pixels. And then a margin auto. What's that div? Cool. Is everyone up to this point? Does anyone need any code? I think so far we've just done some basic setup. We have done a little specific stuff for Redux in our store and our index.js where we import the provider component from Redux, and then we use that store that we're setting up. And the main thing with the store is using this root. We're going to create this root reducer, which we have right here. Now, what we're going to do is for kind of like each feature of our app, we're going to create our own reducer. So we're doing like a to-dos app. So the first reducer I'm going to create, I'm going to do this in a different file. It's called, I'm going to just call this, I'm going to call this to-dos.js. And this is going to be our reducer that really, in this instance, this reducer's job is really going to probably just do the CRUD actions on reducers. We're going to add it to do, update it to do, delete it to do. So let's write a reducer right here. And a reducer is just a function. Don't let these words make this seem like it's more complicated than it is. And we saw this with the use reducer hook. This is kind of maybe a little kind of flashing your memory a little bit. So our reducer takes state. This function's going to take state. And then it's going to take an action. What am I doing right here when I set this equal to an empty array? This is just a function. Like, let's say I have const, foo equals some function r equals 1. What does anyone know what this equal sign is doing? Because this is a function definition. And I have a parameter in here that I'm setting equal to 1.
Is that a default? If nothing's coming in, it'll just default to that.
Yeah, so if I do foo and I don't pass a parameter, that will log 1. But then if I do give it a parameter, it will log, it overwrites that default 1. So I'm expecting my to-dos to be in an array. So if I don't, so this is kind of like the initial state. This is the way I can like set initial state, is by doing a default param. So initially this will be an empty array, and then each other time it'll just be my to-dos. So get rid of that. And remember, I'm going to say this as well, like action. That was one of our terms. The action is just an object with type key, which is a string. A reducer is just a function that takes state and the action and returns new state. And the action is just an object with a key, which is in a string, and an optional, and optional other data if needed. So the action is just an object that has type, just some string, and then it might have, other, which could be whatever. It could be any. It could be like anything, any data type. This would be optional. Okay, so what we do is we're going to do our switch statement on the action.type. So the action.type that we're getting in this second parameter just should be a string, and then we can do different stuff. So let's say our action on this one is add to do. And this, if we have this add to do action, well, I want to return a new state. So I'm going to spread out over my previous state. And then I can add the action. Then I would expect, since I'm adding a to do, I'm going to expect that this action has that to do on it. So, and I'm just going to call that action dot to do. Default. So we always want to default to just return state. If we had like a delete to do action, let's say like we wanted to like delete a to do, we could return our state dot filter, go through each of our, because our state really here is going to be our to-dos. Go through each one of those, go through each to-do, as long as the to-do dot ID does not equal, like the action. Maybe for this one, we'd want to pass an ID. And we'll probably add some more, handle some more cases, but let's just stick with this for now. And then I can export default this reducer. Now I can create, I might create some more reducers, but in the future, but what we're going to do is we're going to take all this, just this one right now, into our index.js. I'm going to get rid of this. Let's just write this over. So what I'm going to do, this index.js is where I'm going to take all my reducers and combine them into one root reducer. So I'm going to import this combine reducers function from Redux, not React Redux, but just Redux. And then I'm going to make this root reducer. And then I'm going to call this combine reducers function. And this takes an object. And the object is going to be, just the key will be the name I want to call it. So I'm going to call this the do's reducer. And the value is going to be that actual reducer I just created. Then I export default to do's. Or sorry, export default root reducer. Okay. So we can actually, even though we don't have anything really set up in our components, we can kind of see if we have this set up. What I can do is just go to my Chrome browser. I can refresh. I can inspect. I mean, also if I hit the right dev tools, I'm starting to see this Redux dev tools. So I want to go to this, find in my inspector, the Redux. Connect here. Here's this Redux dev tools. Then I can go to my state. Boom. There's my to-do state. I have some to-dos and it's an empty array. Something I can do here is, where is my dispatcher? Okay. If I click on this keyboard, it says dispatcher, there's keyboard thingy. I click on that. Notice how it's giving me, I can through this UI, I can dispatch an action. This is my action. An action is just a JavaScript object with the type key. So I want to dispatch this add to do action. And this one, remember, the add to do also expects this to do key. Hello. Eat.
Hey, James.
Yeah.
I was fixing a bug. How did you get to this? I don't see Redux on mine.
You might have to click this double arrow and like find it in there. Or do you still don't see it there?
I don't see it there. And I did get it. I got the extension.
You can pull up the same menu on your extension bar up top too,
Oh, okay.
like by the browser.
And if you right click on in your browser, do you also see like Redux tools?
Oh, yeah, I see that. Okay, cool.
That could be another way.
Thanks.
And then I went to this dispatcher place. I clicked on this dispatcher tab. And then this opened up this window where I have this JavaScript object. And I just threw in a type key with the add to do and a to do with just a string eat. And now I can dispatch this action. So I'm using, instead of a components, I'm using this Redux dev tool to dispatch an action. So I'm going to dispatch that action. That's going to go to my root reducer. And it's going to hit, it's going to run this eventually. It's going to run this function. It's going to hit this case statement, or it's going to change my to-do state. So let's hit this dispatch button right there. Add to do, there was dispatch. I can now look at my state, and now my state has this eat to do. Now this obviously isn't, I haven't set up my UI to work with this, but now I can keep on dispatching this action, eat. And this to do, you know, like I said, it can be any, it could be an object. Maybe I want to give it an ID. And then a title. And I can dispatch that. Now, if I refreshing my app destroys my store. Or it's going to reload and it's going to give me just that initial state back. So yeah, I can now do an add to do action. You know, give it a to do. Maybe this time I want this to be an object, an ID. Let's give it 1. Let's give it a to do. What do I call it in here? I mean, yeah, to do can be like, you know, sleep. So I can just, so this is how we can keep track of our state with Redux. We just dispatch these actions and then eat. Dispatch. So now my to-dos, I can see this state. I have 2 to-dos, you know, eat and sleep. So if I want to dispatch it, if I want to delete one, just how I set it up in my reducer, I have a delete to do. And the action here is expecting an ID key, or because that's how I'm removing it. So instead of this, I want to do the type delete to do, and then I want to do an ID, which can just be a number. So if I go delete ID 2, I do a type delete to do, and then pass it the ID 2, and I dispatch that. That now removes that to do from my state. So is this, so we're using the Chrome extension to dispatch an action. Our action is just that JavaScript object that has a type and maybe some additional payload information. That goes to our reducer. Our reducer is just a function that takes state. It takes our current state and it takes that action and returns new state. And once it returns that new state, we update our store. So the last thing we need to do is just get that state from our store into our UI. But let's stop there. Let's take, this is a good time for a break, and I'm going to create a repo for this. Does anyone have any questions? Is this making sense? Yeah, I think part of the reason Redux was so hard for me when I learned it is I never learned about context. I didn't know about providers. I never used the use reducer hooks. That wasn't around. And also the other thing that made Redux hard was we didn't do much. I didn't have much practice with like the with kind of this, what is it called? These non-mutative JavaScript where we're not mutating our state, where we're returning new state. So that was a little, I wasn't that good at that. So hopefully after your this 4 or 5 weeks with React, you have a good grasp on, kind of these CRUD actions and like not mutating your state, just returning new state. So hopefully that should make Redux a little easier to learn. But let's take a break. I'm going to create a GitHub repo. Let's come back at 10:40. If there's any questions, feel free to ask now. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. So where we left off, we have our store set up where we're able to dispatch actions. We have this delete to do and a add to do. But now we don't have a way to, we need to figure out how to actually display our to-dos to our UI. So let's go ahead and do that. So to do this, we'll go into my to-do list folder or file. And this is where we want to render those to-dos. So I want to grab those to-dos from my store. So how I do this with React is I need to connect this component to my store. So I'm going to import this connect function from React Redux. And what I'm going to do is and when I export, I'm going to call this connect function. And then I call this to-do list. This is a JavaScript question. What's up with this syntax where I'm calling a function and then I have this to-do list in parentheses? Any ideas what's going on here? What I could say is, what type of, what do you think connect this function? What do you think this function is returning?
Is it returning a function?
Yeah, exactly. So it's returning a function and then I'm calling that function and passing it the to-do list. So that's what's going on with that syntax. Now this connect function, we're going to see it takes a couple parameters. For this one, we only need to pass it one parameter. And I'm going to create a function up here, and I'm going to call this function map state to props. And this is just a function that I'm calling. I could call this X or whatever, but you'll see this function be called map state to props. As kind of a convention, because that's what it's doing. It's going to take have access to the store, and it's going to then give me props. And this is what I pass to this connect function. Now this function right here can take one parameter. I'm going to call this parameter state. So that's really what it's going to be. It's going to be that global state in my store. And then down here, let's just call this X. I'm going to call this, and I'm going to go into my state. I could maybe just call this my store. Doesn't really matter because I'm just declaring a function right here. But what this is going to be that my global state in my Redux app. And I want to map this to my state.todos. All right. And I'm calling this X for now, just so we can kind of see what's going on here. So now all of a sudden, this to-do list, because I'm mapping from my store to props, this object, and right now I have this X prop. So I can actually now destructure this X prop. Let's just do a JSON just to see what this is. JSON dot stringify X. Getting error expected in assignment function call line 14. Let's see, here's my function. Oh, I need to return this as an object. So this map state to props, it takes in my state, and then it returns an object calling this thing X. Oh, there's my empty array. Let's dispatch a add to do. You know, to do one, to do. Let's dispatch that. There we go. So that's what that map state to props function is doing. It's grabbing in to my state, grabbing the to-dos, and then mapping that to props. So my state.todos, I'm mapping that to props to this component. And I called that X. Probably not the best name. I should probably just call that to-dos. 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 And then, yeah, I don't want to just stringify the to-dos. I can go ahead and do a to-dos map. Go through each of my to-dos. Let's go ahead and render a to-do component. And spread out over the to-do. Let's also give it a key. So we don't get that warning. We'll say to-do.id. Questions on this map state to props? It's kind of a little weird syntax. It's just how Redux wants us to do this. Can go in really quickly to the to-do. Let's just say our to-do for now is going to have like an ID, maybe a complete Boolean and a to-do. To-do. And maybe if I want to have some default to-dos, well, I can go to my to-do list. Or sorry, my to-dos reducer. Maybe I want to have some here by default. I could do like const initial state. We come in here and creates a couple dummy to-dos. Let's give this an ID of 0. Let's give this a to-do of eat. Say complete is false. And then let's do like sleep. And that can be true. And then I can, instead of having my state be this empty array, I'll have it be this initial state. object up here that I created. And the only reason I did that is just so I have some default to-dos. I no longer need this JSON stringify since I'm rendering them. Maybe my to-do, I don't want this as a header, this as a paragraph. Not so big. Let's do just a tiny bit of styling on this, just so we can see if it's done or not. Because we're going to do a filter in 1 second. So I'm going to do a style. I'm going to see if complete is true. So if our complete is true, we're going to do a actually, I don't want to do this. So I'm first going to see if my complete's true. If it is, I'm going to return an object that has text decoration as line through. Spell line through. And then a color of gray. If complete is not true, I'm just going to return an empty array. So it'll just be black. It won't have any special styling. If I wanted to show the ID, I can do that as well. So now I have eat. That is not done, so that doesn't have any special styling. My sleep is, and that has, it's grayed out and has a line through it. Okay. Questions on this so far? So let's go ahead and create our form. Because so far we've still been, all of our actions we're dispatching from our browser. We don't want to do that. Let's go see how we can like create a form and then dispatch the action. So just do a generic like form. So we'll grab some use state. We can have like a const to do. Oh wait, sorry. To do, set to do, use state. This is just going to be our state for our form. Maybe actually I want to call this name. Set name. Come in here, create a form. This is really our to-do name. We'll create an input. So the value will be our name, our on change. This will be our standard. Take our event, set name to e.target.value. So there we are. We're inputs working. Let's go ahead and do a button. Let's submit. We can do an add here. Do our on submit. Nothing new here. This is kind of our general like form handling. Take our event. Okay, so this one we do want to prevent default since we don't, we definitely do not want to reload here. So reloading will refresh our store, which is bad. So I see this a lot with, I think this happens a lot in like hackathons with React. Like people like groups will like like try to like refresh their app to update their UI. Yeah, if you're using Redux, that's going to destroy your entire store. It's like refreshing your app and then all of your state's going to get destroyed. So you never want to do that with Redux. It'll break everything. So this kind of like we never want to refresh with Redux. There are ways to when you do refresh, if you can store everything to local storage, so when you do refresh it like automatically it's called like hydrating your store. It hydrates your store and gets it back to the state it was. So you can do that, but for now, like if you're using Redux, you just essentially can't reload. All right. And yeah, let's just see right here if we can console.log our name. Let's see if we got that much set up. Go to my console. Have a to-do learn Redux. Add. Okay, cool. So I have that all set up. My form set up, my handle submits set up. What do I want to do here? What's the, you don't know how to do this maybe, but what's kind of the terminology?
You want to dispatch or
Yeah.
action?
I want to dispatch an action. So something like this. I want to like dispatch an action, and an action, remember, is just a object of like an add, to do, and then I have like a to do. I need some ID. Just for now, do like a math.random. And then like what else do we have? We have like a to do, which would be my name, and complete defaults. So so I want this like dispatch function that can dispatch actions. So how I do that is let me think here. Actually having a lapse in memory. Let's try this out. Remember if we just, okay, I think, okay, let's try this. If I do an import connect, from React Redux again. And then I just, once again, connect. To do form. Now I'm not using any, I'm not mapping any state here. So I do believe if I connect, then I should get a dispatch prop. So since I'm calling this connect function, and then, you know, calling to do form on that return function, I now should have this dispatch prop because it's now connected. So let's see if this works. If I say like cook add, there we go.
My VS Code auto completed a use dispatch hook, so I played around with that and got that working. Is that another good way to make that work?
Yeah, so if they're from, is that from React Redux?
Yeah.
Use dispatch and then like this, or is it just dispatch?
It's use dispatch, and then but it threw me an error until I declared a const dispatch and set it equal to use dispatch.
Yeah, like that. So that could be another way you do that and you don't have to connect it. If that's how you want to do it. I'm gonna keep, I'll leave that there as a reference, but you know, with use dispatch hook. So, but yeah, so, and we can now see this with our, with our Chrome extensions. So I can do something like, when I click add, see it's this, I can now see this, the action being dispatched. You can see the state. One of the nice things about this, I can actually go through and like replay my history. So I can like step through all of these actions being returned. Because something about Redux is every time you dispatch an action, it returns a brand new state. Like, so you get a whole new store. So you kind of get like this nice little history of what's going on in your app. All right. So let's do something like an update. And for update, we can just do like a toggle to complete. So if I click on one of these, I want to be able to dispatch maybe like a toggle complete or like toggle to do action. Oh wait, one other thing I might want to do with here in my form is just set name. So once this is done, just set name to an empty string. Yeah, if I and then another thing, yeah, so notice when I refresh, it destroys, it goes back to my initial state. But now, yeah, I just have it now. So when I click add, it resets my form. So I'm actually going to go into my to-dos. I don't want any default to-dos, so I'm going to just delete those two ones. just have my initial state be an empty array. Whatever. Cool. So let's do another action. So, or handle another action is here. And let's do a case. Let's say we want to do a toggle. Toggle underscore to do. What function am I going to use on this one? Like a filter, a map, a for each. Am I removing any to do? So when I toggle a do, I'm just going from like complete to true to false or vice versa. So am I removing anything?
No, so probably either a for each or a map.
Yeah, so that's good. And for this one, I'm going to do a map because with what I always want to do with these reducers is I never want to mutate the original state. Definitely that's like, don't want to do that. I want to always return a new state. So for that one, that just makes me think of the map function. I could do that. I could do it with a for each and still not mutate state. But the map, remember, goes through each item in an array and returns a new array. So that's sounds like exactly what I want. So I can go through each to do. And I'm going to see, hey, does the to do dot ID, does that equal the action dot ID? Because in that action, I'm going to pass an ID key. If they do match, well, this is the one I want to toggle. So I'm going to copy my to do. I'm going to take this to do, I'm going to create a new object with that to do copied, but I'm just going to update the complete field to be the opposite of whatever that value is. If the IDs don't match, then I don't need to do anything with that. I'm just going to return the to do. And really this dev tool is really nice because I just wrote this in my reducer, but now I can go at least test this without doing anything in my UI, without having to go hook up the event handlers. I can go to my UI. Let's go ahead and refresh this. No, eat. And then I can just right here, I can test it out. I can do toggle. Oh, this ID might be hard to match. I can pass it an ID. Just copy that one. I can dispatch that. Cool. So using my tools, I can test this action, and that toggled it in my UI. Sweet. So now it's like, now I know like my reducer is working, that's always a great way to like debug stuff. If you can like, if you know things are working up to a point, it's just going to make it easier when you do run into issues. It's going to help narrow down where to look. So what I'm going to want to have happen is in my to-do component, this is where I want to dispatch that action. So let's do this the other way with the hook. So let's do import, use dispatch. And you're going to create a const dispatch. Let's use dispatch. And on here, now I can just create an event handler on click. Maybe I'm going to do it on the div. Or actually, I don't even need this in a div. It's kind of a little redundant. You can have a on click. here I can just call that dispatch. Well, this is where I want to do my type. That's going to be my toggle to do. And then I called it an ID, right? Action.id. Yep. So ID is going to be the ID. Actually, I'm pulling that from props. So I could write it like this, ID colon ID, but if the key and value are the same, I don't have to write that. And now when I click on that, that dispatches that action and toggles it. So now I can, I can add a to-do. Sleep. Go in and toggle it. All right. Let's come in here. Let's just show just another example of like how we can have different reducers. So instead of having our to-do use like this math.random to generate this ID, let's create a new reducer that that generates a new ID for us. Since we're not using a database, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. Call this next ID.js. So I'm just going to create another reducer, and all this reducer is going to do. So the last, like our to-do reducers, that has our state of our to-dos, which is in an array. This next ID is just going to be a number of like the next ID to set for our to-do. So let's go ahead and write this out. So once again, a reducer is just a function that takes state. Now this one's just, this next ID is just going to be a number. So I'm going to default this number to 0. And we also have an action. And then I'm going to do a switch statement on my action.type. And this is just going to have one case. If I get the increment ID string, then this is just going to return our state plus 1. So this is essentially just a counter. That's all this is. And with all of our reducers, we always want to, our default is just going to be return state. And what am I doing? It's not
It's the
reset.
colon. Yeah.
There we go. And then I can export default this reducer. So I created a new reducer. I now want to add that to my root reducer. So I can now grab my next ID and import that. So this is a nice way to keep our reducers clean, is I can separate them into their own individual functionality. Like this one's just concerned about keeping track of the IDs. This to-dos reducer is just, all it cares about is keeping track of the to-do state. And then in this combine reducers, I can throw all of these root reducers, combine them into one reducer, which then I pass to my store. Or this I use that to create my store. And now if I go back and refresh and look at my state, Now I have my to-do state and my next ID. And if I dispatch the increment ID, notice this one, I don't need to pass anything else. Like I don't need to pass a number. I don't need to pass any data because it's just going to know to add one. So if I dispatch that, that just adds one to my next ID. Okay, so then in my to-do form, instead of doing math.random, well, I now need to get that next ID. So I need to do the map state to props. Constant map state to props. Return, I'm just gonna call this ID. And this is gonna be state dot next ID. So then I can grab that next ID from my state, map it to props, and then in the props, I'm calling it ID. So now inside of here, I'm going to have an ID prop. And then after here, I'm also, so I can add one. Or I could dispatch this. Well, we can do it after. Dispatch increment ID. So I add my to do, and then I dispatch that increment ID to add one. So a couple changes. Oh, I also need to now pass this map state to function, map state to props function to my connect function to actually map this ID prop to my component. So I do that, pass it there. Now I have an ID prop, which I pull up here, and then I can just use that for my to do. ID. So I can say, so if I refresh, look at my state. So I have no to do's. My next ID is 0. So I can say eat, click add. Oh, sorry. Dispatch, that's not an object. That's dispatching a string. I need to dispatch an object with the type key. Time eat. See, that adds my to do, and then also then it increments my ID. Then I can do sleep. Toggle. One of the really, like, this is the really nice thing about Redux is this dev tool. Because I can come in, it makes it easier to find out, is my problem like a UI problem, or is my state somehow getting corrupted? So it's very easy to go in and kind of check that. You can definitely do that with the components tool that we installed. It's just a little, I mean, I've never tried to do this with Redux, but yeah, you come in here, maybe look at that. So you can do that in your apps. Go use your components, go select the right component that's holding the state, and then try to look at find the state there. But this tool, this Redux tool is really, really nice. It's a lot easier to use. And then all of your state with Redux, you only have one store. You're not going to create, you could, because with use context, you could create potentially multiple providers. With the Redux, you only have one store. There's only one global state object. So it's all there. And yeah, these can get like, you can have tons of reducers. Let's see, is there anything else? Any questions on this? Let's do, so what I want to do really quick, actually, let's do this. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll do a filter example. So we'll be able to do it. We'll do another reducer that kind of where we can toggle like the completed, all, and not done. So we'll do a filter example, and then with the remaining part of lecture, I kind of, since you won't be adding this to your app, I just want you to get some practice, maybe trying doing the steps yourself, trying to add your own reducer. So let's take another like 12-minute break. Let's come back at 11:35. We'll finish up we'll do a filter example, and then I'll give you a little bit of time to experiment on your own. And let me push this up to GitHub. Are there any questions? If not, you can take off and come back at 11:35. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with this. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna add a footer down here that has 3 options to select, all, complete, and not complete. And then we'll toggle our to-do list based on that, just to kind of do another review of start creating a reducer. So let's say I come in here and I want to create like a filter reducer. It's filter. Here's just, it's just a function that takes state. So this one's just going to be a string. That's what our state's going to be. And by default, I'm going to just have it be all. Then our switch statement, do action.type. What do I want to call this? I'll change switch filter. Let's call this update filter. And then for this, we'll just return action dot filter. Just do my case statements wrong. Okay. Okay, and then we always want our default. Just to be return state. Let's export default our filter reducer. Let's maybe call this set, I think set filter. A little more clear. All right. So what I'm going to do now is in this, I'm in my to-do list. Now I'm actually going, I'm going to want my filter state. Before I render them, I'm going to want to filter them. This is going to get a little messy, so I'm going to do a render to-dos function. Let's try it. I could try to do this inside of here, but yeah, I think this is going to get a little messy, so I can do this. Say const filter to-dos equals my to-dos dot filter. How do I to do this actually? What's the cleanest way? Maybe I can just do an if statement. If, because let's do this. If filter equals, we're going to have complete. Let's go ahead and return. Let's do it this way. So if my filter equals complete, then I want to go through each of my to-dos and just return the ones where the complete is true. All right. Or I can do a if filter equals, let's say incomplete. Essentially do something similar here, but it's going to do not t.complete. And if I don't match any of that, that's going to be my all case. Then I'm just going to return to-dos. This is my all case. Sorry, I'm going to change this name to filter to-dos. Get rid of that function. And then I'm just going to call my filter to-dos, and then I'm going to call the dot map on that. So I have this function filter to-dos, which looks at my filter that I get from my state that I'm mapping to props. So I also need to pull that from props. Because the map state to props is going to make this prop available to my component. So now I have a filter prop. So really the only Redux thing I did here is I'm having this filter state, and then I'm going to use that filter state to figure out which to-dos I want to keep. And in my filter reducer, I have this one action set filter, which just returns the action.filter. And I need to now add this to my reducers, to my root reducer. I don't have it. Let's see. So if I do eat, because right now my filter is all, it should show all of them. Let's do sleep and code. Let's make sleep done. So I should be able to now test this out by dispatching my set filter action. Let's give it a filter. So if I do this with complete, dispatch that, assignment to constant. Oh. What am I doing here? Line 7. What does this not like? So I'm going to go back to my to-do list because that's where the error is coming from. That's double equals. I mean, we should make that a triple equal anyway, but that's not the issue.
I was able to get it to work by deleting the like on line 8, the filter to-dos equals, and just returning to-dos dot filter.
Oh yeah, yep, that is definitely it. Yeah, there's the assignment. Do not want that. And then I need to get, I don't know what I was doing there. There we go. Let's write those. If you can write an if statement with one line, you actually don't need brackets. little shortcut, JavaScript shortcut. But cool, there we go. So now, yeah, I don't know what I was doing there. Here we'll filter them properly. Let's go refresh. Test these out. Eat, sleep, code. Spend your lives for the last 11 weeks. Make one of those complete. So yeah, now we can set filter. Let's do a filter. Let's dispatch this complete. So I'm going to dispatch that. So now I'm just showing my complete ones. I can do incomplete, dispatch that. That's all the ones that are not done. And then if it's anything else, really, if it's all, then we go back to show all of them. So once again, this is really nice to be able to test like this. Because I don't have any UI stuff set up really, but I now know like this filter functionality as far as like the Redux stuff and like setting this, like that's working. Like I have this reducer working. So now all I need to really do is go create a footer to maybe handle this. So we have this footer component. Instead of saying footer, I could just go ahead and like, you know, create, you know, 3 clickable divs or paragraphs or whatever. Delete, incomplete. Let's do on clicks for all of these. I'm going to do this just because you might see this. This is actually probably a little more common way you'll see this, or you might see it. Just to give you a different example, I'm going to do like set filter. So we can dispatch an action. But there's another way we can kind of dispatch these actions. Okay, I can actually come in here and you'll also see this a lot, this map dispatch to props. Dispatch. So this is a lot like our map state to props, but this is a way I can now create like a function. I forgot how to do. I'm going to need to like look at. Let me think here. Give me 1 second. So that's going to be an object. I'm going to dispatch. Let's see if this works. Type. So here I can throw in the type, which would be set filter. Filter. So I still need this connect function. So I'm going to grab this connect function from React Redux. So as a second argument to the connect function, I can pass it this other function where I'm matching dispatch to props. So I can create these functions that dispatch my action. So I have this set filter that I'm going to now be able to have access to in props. That's just going to be a function. Here's the function. It takes a filter and then it calls dispatch. And then it dispatched the type set filter and then whatever was passed to this function, the filter. So here I'm calling the set filter all. So that's going to dispatch the set filter with the all filter. If I do it with complete, that will dispatch the set filter with the complete and so forth. And then I need to wrap this in a, let's see. Now this needs to be null because this first argument that connect is expecting is that map is where we map our state to our props. And right here, I'm not doing that. Maybe we can come back and do some styling with this, but for now I'm going to leave this null. Because if that is not null, then this, even though I called this map dispatch to props, this is now going to break because this is going to think, oh, this is the function that's mapping our state. It's going to look for the state in our store. So if I'm not using that at the moment, I'm just going to have this be null. So let's refresh. Let's do eat, sleep, code. Let's make one of these done. So let's click complete, incomplete, and all. So that's another way I can dispatch these actions is create this function that has access to that dispatcher, and then I can dispatch the actions here. And then I mapping the set filter, I'm calling it set filter here. That's the prop I can then pull off and call. That's the function then. It's the way I can get back to this function. So let's say for this one, we did want to like get the value of our filter. Well, then I can do my map state to props. I can return this object. I'll call that a filter prop and that'll be state.filter. And now I have this filter. And then for these, I can do like style equals. I mean, I probably want to make a component out of this, but let's just throw this in a function for now. So I can have like this get style function. And then I can say something like this. Oh, wait. Maybe this is just easier if I do it in here. So let's say style equals filter. I'm going to get rid of this. So I can say does like the filter equal all. Then I could do like a color. Or like, how do I do an underline? Font style. Just the color. It's blue. Question mark. Because yeah, maybe I do want to style these like if it's active. Refresh that. Oh, so here's the thing. I'm not getting my style. This is nice because I can look at my state. I can see my filter is all. So it's like I know in my store my filter set properly, but now I know it's like a UI thing. So why isn't that? So now I know where it kind of helps me look. Okay, so it's probably something here. And something I forgot to do was I created this map state to props, but I never passed it here to my connect function. So I never had this filter prop. So now that those are connected, I should now have it. And now I can get the styling for which one I'm selected on. And there we go. I'm going to add this, push up to GitHub. So cool. So what I want to have you do, I want you to spend like an hour on this and on your own, because you've been watching me do it. I want you to go in and you go create your own reducer, your own kind of state. And it doesn't have to do anything with users. I could go in and create like a, maybe I want like a user. I want some user state. Const user. I could do my user reducer. So state, maybe my initial state, maybe I have some state that's just an object. And then you can come in here and create a reducer that like handles like CRUD actions or whatever, just updating that reducer. Action dot type. Have birthday. So you can come in here and kind of do whatever. I would say try maybe doing something with like an array of objects or objects just to get some practice with like, well, I want to, return a new object. I don't want to destroy this object or mutate this object. So if I have a birthday, I'd want to do something like this, like where I'd copy my state and just update the age to be state.age +1. Stuff like that. Then we have my default return state. So go in here, maybe if you want to start out, you could start out with something simple like a counter. If you want to just try something simple, do a counter where you can like add and subtract. If you want to do something and just to get a hang of it, that's a way you could do that. And then add, and then maybe get a little more complicated. So like I now have user state. I could go add that to my reducer or to my root reducer. User. So now if I look at my state, see here. Now there's my user. And then I could probably dispatch like have birthday. And now whenever I dispatch that, my age goes up. And then you would want to go in and, add this to the UI. So that is just a quick little intro to Redux. I think Redux should, I think with your experience with providers, with not mutating state, and with our little talk about use reducer, this should have been, hopefully a lot of this wasn't too crazy. How do you feel about this so far? Yeah.
Feel all right about it.
Yeah, not too confusing. There's definitely a lot of pieces. So yeah, if you're just doing a to-do app, this is like way more trouble than it's worth. But as your app gets more and more complicated, something like Redux is so nice, because now you have this global state. If you want to use state from your store, you can just do this like map state to props, and you can pull anything. Like I want my age. Well, that's going to be my state.user.age. Boom. Now I have this age prop. In my to-do form. Well, it breaks, but let's see what that is on. Age is state.user.age. There we go. So now I can just easily grab stuff from my, from my store. And, once I create these reducers and handle all these cases, then I just need to dispatch have birthday, and then that's going to increment that age. And then I can use these in any components I want. I can dispatch any of the actions I want in any components. It really is nice when you have a lot of complicated shared state. Like I've worked on apps that I'd be like, I would not know how to do this without Redux. That was before like I knew about providers and context, but when you have a lot of complicated state, it's, you need state management. So yeah, let's just, and I'll say you can take a break whenever, but I do want you, the way you're really going to learn this is trying to create your own reducer, trying to dispatch the actions, trying to get the state. So try that. If you do get stuck, I'm going to be around. Please just, yell at me, and then you can share your screen and I'll help you out. But are there any questions on that? Cool. Well, yeah, we'll just work up until, let's call it like 1. You can take a break whenever. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. And also one other thing, sorry, I forgot to announce this. And this was just thrown out in Slack. So tonight at 5 o'clock, Mariah Peterson's coming. I'm not quite, I think she talks about like just what she works on. I think she's like a Golang developer. She's pretty big on Golang, maybe Rust, I don't know. But you can just get her experience. She's been doing these things, I think, ever since I've been a teacher. So she's got a good perspective. That'll be at 5 o'clock on Slack. She has like the Twitch and YouTube link, so it's not going to be on Zoom. It's going to be on, you can join either one of those. And then Wednesday, we have a Rise Point event. That's just a company who, I swear it's because of this one of our students. I think he was a summer cohort student. He got a job there, and he's just been playing like recruiter, and like they've hired like 6 DevPoint lab students since he's been there, because he's always just on the alumni board, just saying, hey, come work for this company. So they're gonna, so I think they're probably giving him money for each hire he is recruiting. So I think we should just go directly to DevPoint Labs and bypass him. So definitely go to that on Wednesday because they're probably looking for people to hire. So that'd be a good one to go to. Sweet. So those are those two announcements. I'll remind you on Wednesday about the Rise Point event. Any questions?
Yeah, I have kind of an aside question, just since we brought this up. Going forward, not necessarily related to the Rise Point situation, but is there anything to know as far as dealing with recruiters? Is there any like tips or anything to watch out for or anything like that, I guess? I don't know.
I like recruiters. I feel like that's how I got my job. I got my job through Teleperformance through a recruiter, and I got my job through Evernym through a recruiter. Now, I didn't like hire these people. I feel like a lot of the time when there's like a job description on LinkedIn, it's actually like a recruiter's creating it. And like when you apply, you're actually applying to a recruiter. And then that's like, that can a lot of the like, I don't know if it's just my personal experience, but I feel like about half of my interviews are first with a recruiter because that's who I applied to. So, but yeah, I think I've had good experiences with them. But I definitely like, now that I have like a lot of experience, I get hit up by recruiters like all the time. So I think it's a good way to go about getting a job. So, and then, yeah, you don't, the company ends up paying them. So it's not out of your pocket, but
Okay, cool.
yeah, I would say, yeah, don't pay a recruiter because your company should be paying the recruiter if they end up hiring you. So. Cool. Yeah, and this week you can always, this is a good week to start asking those type of questions. I'll definitely on like Wednesday and Thursday, I'll definitely have my little spiel. So we definitely have, I have some words, but yeah, if you have questions, this is the time to be asking them this last week. So.
Sweet. Sounds good.
Cool. All right. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Just work on this up until 1, and then we'll go from there. And then we'll take lunch.